The new top 25 when it is released on Sunday. Again, one of the big sort of storylines is how many close upsets, not quite upsets, there were. So I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of change in the actual numbers. Voters are very traditional, sort of their big win, move up, lose, move down, especially when you get to this part of the season. So Georgia off, they'll be number 1. Michigan smashed Michigan State, but no one's going to bounce Georgia. Like if you had Georgia 1, I think that for the most part, the AP voter is going to leave Georgia at number. Hey, look,
Michigan might steal some votes.
They might steal some votes, but they won't replace them in the consensus. Agree?
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Ohio State, again, like the best win, at least, in terms of the quality of opponent that you beat. But I think they stay there at number 3. Same thing with
Florida. They might also steal some votes.
True. Same thing. So I went back to look at this going into the day. After the 27-20 scare against Auburn, that is the closest that the first place votes have been dispersed. Like they got all the way down to like 35 first place votes. Last week, after Michigan's, was that the 52-10 against Minnesota? Was that last week?
Something along, yeah. So I can't remember.
I don't know. One of
devastations.
Or 52-7 against Indiana. Yeah. One of these like ridiculous scores. Last week is the closest that Georgia and Michigan have gotten in voting points. So the first place votes for Georgia were strong last week compared to coming out of the Auburn scare, but the voting points. So it seems like everyone, the AP voters as a consensus, are really dialing into those two as your top 2 teams in the country. Washington at number 5, who knows? We will be finding out about that as things go on. But then it gets interesting because number 6, Oklahoma, 31-29 against UCF. UCF had a 2-point try. Oh, why are you doing a double pass?
But I feel like everybody in the stadium knew exactly what was coming too.
Did you know that UCF is 0 for 4 on 2-point conversions this year?
Why is that, Chip?
Because the whole offense is 2-point conversion plays. Just hit the ball through the clown's mouth when the windmill is at just the right time.
You got to love Gus Malzahn on the bot, though. Like the ability for that staff to just draw up stuff that's going to bother the opponent. Like you give them 2 weeks and a returning healthy quarterback.
They used all their 2-point plays for all the touchdowns in the game. Oh no! Oh goodness. All right, so let's we'll dial back to that real quick. So Texas is also had a scare, 24-17. 24-17. That was fine. Yeah, 24-17 against Houston. Now, Oregon, a little frisky early, but man, Bucky Irving was a baller in this game. A couple explosive runs in the third quarter helped the Ducks put Washington State away. So before we start to get into that next little bit, and I want to spend some time with Alabama, Tennessee, in Oklahoma, UCF, in Texas, Houston, stay in that corner right now. What were some of the big takeaways for y'all?
That Big 12 refs forgot which teams are supposed to screw this year with that spot in the Texas Houston game. I think crossed wires. I don't know. I think my biggest takeaway is that the Red River Shootout is an emotional game that takes a lot out of you and can kind of distract you both ways, I guess, because both teams looked kind of I mean, Texas came out really sharp and then they just kind of stopped. I don't know what happened, but
Quinn Ewers got knocked out of the game with a shoulder injury, and then Malik Murphy couldn't throw the ball, so they just ran the ball with Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, and I think that really is like my biggest takeaway from both those games is Oklahoma survived. That's all. Scary close call. We survived. We move on. Texas for me is how bad is Ewers' shoulder going to be, and how is that going to impact them next week?
A couple things. One, yeah, Texas did come out looking sharp, but man, like good teams would put away an offense like Houston. Like Houston doesn't block anybody. And Texas wasn't getting the quarterback enough in like the final 35, 40 minutes of this game, and they weren't covering people. So, like, congrats on the win, but you're a 23-point favorite. Like, guys, you were a really big favorite over Wyoming and didn't take care of business. Like, there's been a couple of these this year where it's like, okay, huge favorite, right? Oklahoma a little less so, 17, 18 points there. UCF has some real athletes on its team, and it had a bye week as well. So, like, that one, I forgive them a little bit more. but I think we saw some continuing potential problems with this offense. And I'll go to the offense first because UCF's defense has been really poor so far this year. Oklahoma still couldn't run the football. Like against Texas, it was largely Dylan Gabriel, but you don't want to go to Dylan Gabriel running the football every game. So that to me was a bit concerning. I do think they missed Anthony, who's not coming back this year, right? Like he's out for the year. So, OU to me still looks like a really good team. They still play hard. But, like, man, you can't run it against UCF. That is a little concerning for sure.
No Tyree Walker, but, I obviously, friend of the program, Dusty Dvorak, he was on it from, like, the start. He's like, Oklahoma's run game has not been consistent, and I think today it's gotten exposed. And he said that several times throughout the podcast. I trust him to be able to have, not podcast, throughout the game, I trust him to be able to have, his finger on the pulse of that all the way through. Tyree Walker's been an important part of the run game. By the very end of it, Sawchuk and Majors were kind of like each stepping up for some big scoring drives. Like Dylan Gabriel did just enough, but I kind of think it was also that offensive line leaning on them. I credit UCF a little bit for that run defense. You know how we were talking about, oh, God, UCF's going to be devastated by this. But you know how we talk about some defenses where we don't think they're good, but they're playing hard?
Yes.
Like UCF looked like that today, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like they were
90% of defenses, Chip.
They wanted to be there. They cared. Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to use the reference because the first reference that came to mind is we were talking about Jacksonville State. And if I say that UCF looked like Jacksonville State, that's just disrespectful. I'm not trying to do that.
State.
Yes.
Do we really feel differently about these teams after this weekend?
No.
Oklahoma or Texas?
Yeah.
No.
In some ways I do, because it's like another opportunity for them to take another step, and we didn't see it.
Potential. All right, so I do feel slightly differently, but only with a set of circumstances, because there were two teams. I know that Oklahoma still has to play one of them, but let's see. Kansas State is still on Texas's schedule. That could be a wee bit problematic. We'll see. Oklahoma still has Oklahoma State. They do not play Kansas State. I'm not scared of TCU anymore.
Oh, God, did you see that game?
Yeah.
Kansas State killed them.
That's what I'm coming out and look, Oklahoma State did not look wildly impressive, but damn, that group has found something. Like they have settled into a nice little place to where that game being in Stillwater and it being Bedlam, if Oklahoma doesn't play well, Oklahoma will lose that game.
Undertaker meme, but it's Oklahoma State's Big 12 ticket. Just reaching out from the grave. It's still alive.
I mean, the South Al loss is going to really hurt you with the college football playoff, but that's not Oklahoma State's goal.
I did dare to dream a little bit. I was like, okay, like how dead is this thing? And it's probably dead, but like it's potentially hedgeable.
What, the Pokes?
Yeah, still a bad bet by me, but like, I mean, realistic. I don't know. Like the process was okay, but it was really, if Oklahoma and/or Texas don't live up to the hype, who could potentially get there and would have it make sense. But still, like Oak State still has, who do they have left? Cincinnati,
Win.
OU, at UCF, at Houston, BYU.
I'm just saying. I'm just
Weirder
saying.
things have happened.
Oh, they're an
Ollie Gordon is
away from being
out of
in the Big 12
control.
title game.
Like that's again, Oklahoma State has at least found this position in the season where it knows exactly what it is. It does. Here's a transition. I was on the halftime show for the SEC on CBS Sports HQ, and at halftime it was 20-7. I was like, I think Alabama's going to win this football game. I was like, Alabama is limited. Alabama is flawed compared to the program standard. But what I saw in the first half was that they weren't quitting. Like they were still like dialed into that game. They were still applying effort. They were making mistakes. Like plays weren't going well. And I think that that's where I'm at with Alabama right now, is that it is a limited group, but the few things that it does well, if it leans into that, is good enough to win all of the rest of its games on its regular season schedule. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be dominant. From 2016 to 2020, Alabama was winning games by anywhere from 24 to 28 points per game. That has dropped more into like the 10 to 14 on average range in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Danny Cannell has detailed here about the increase of one-score games compared to what was going on when Alabama was at its peak. It is not the juggernaut. The capital D dynasty is done. But what Alabama is within the vacuum of the 2023 season, still a group that can go and win the SEC. Limited, but the things that it does still can be good enough. It seems like that group is not checking out despite all of the criticism that is valid about how it is not anywhere close to the Alabama that we are used to seeing with our eyes.
And there were some teams who checked out today. And maybe we'll hold that for Monday because we have to do carousel and whatnot. But like, yeah, Chip, I'm glad you said that because I did not agree. I did not think that Bama was going to come back and win at halftime because I was worried about Bama's offense. I was like, man, if Tennessee can scheme just one more explosive for a touchdown, they may just be able to get to a number that Bama can't get to.
Sure.
Right? Like furious comeback, Bama looks really awesome type thing, but they just can't get to whatever number Tennessee got to. Maybe that number is like 31. And instead, they're like, yeah, we're just going to beat the ever-loving heck out of you up front every single snap with our D-line. And I know Mincy went out. We've talked about the lack of depth on Tennessee's offensive line. Like, you pull one guy out, they really struggle. They didn't score in the second half, did they?
No,
not at all.
I mean, they got whipped up front in the second half. Bama took the physicality, I thought, to a different level.
I honestly, I haven't watched this game that closely. Like I saw most of the first half, and then the second half, I kind of checked out. I moved on to other games, and then I even texted you guys and says, "What the hell happened to Tennessee?" And Danny responds with, "Joe Milton thought you could hold the ball for 5 seconds," but from what I saw, like I thought Alabama was going to lose. Just to be honest, I mean, I'll have to go watch it tomorrow. I've got it on the DVR, but I didn't have a great takeaway from either one of these teams. And I didn't think Tennessee was all that great even while they were winning the game. So I don't know.
I mean, Bama won by 2 touchdowns with 350 yards of offense. That says something.
Mm-hmm.
That defense is really damn good.
Yeah.
Now we got a Titanic battle coming up because it's kind of flipped. Like Bama's offense, not special. LSU's defense in 2 weeks, certainly not special. LSU's offense, freakishly good. I mean, like that's for the West, basically, right?
Yeah, that's the Iowa USC battle everyone's been looking for. I say Tennessee, by the way, is going to end up remaining in the top 25. It gets
Quality loss.
It gets really, really murky near the end, and I'm not sure how hasty voters are going to be to throw Liberty in there. Liberty is 7-0. They had the midweek win against Middle Tennessee. I do think they will get more votes than they did. But guys, there were not a lot of teams that got a lot of votes. The entire voting body last week was almost entirely consensus. JMU, congratulations. I do believe you're going to break back in. Your first ever AP poll ranking was last year. You were only there for 1 week. Let's try to make it more than 1 week. Don't lose right after that. The next team was Clemson. The Tigers, obviously, as we mentioned, just lost at Miami. Florida, which was off. And then you just get into like Washington State. Washington State lost. Fresno State off. Liberty. Like now we're talking about teams that showed up as like the 24 or 25 on just a couple of ballots. I think Oklahoma State now at 5-2 will get a little bit of attention, but not enough to break through.
Miami might jump back in.
Miami could, for sure. They'll be in the mix right there. But without the lack of anything close to a consensus, I just figured that USC falls out. And I think that Tennessee hangs on just barely. Maybe Florida, which was right on the outside, cracks its way back in. But that, 24 to 27 spot is soft. Very, very soft. I don't think we're going to see a strong cutoff by any means after this week.
Do you think USC falls out? Because like they were dropping them in the polls after wins, and now they've lost 2 in a row.
I do think they fall out because like Florida has a better argument to be ranked as a 2-loss team than USC does.
Yeah. I mean, what's USC's best win?
Right. Yeah. So I felt, like bounced to Iowa. Sorry. But like you were at 24. You didn't hold a whole lot of credence with the voters already. That's an easy one to be able to knock out for a lot of people. And then I bounced USC. Those were the 2 that for sure, UCLA is still putting it on Stanford, right? It was 21-0 last time I checked.
Yeah, 21-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
You've got a 5-2 Wisconsin. You've got a 6-2 Rutgers.
6-2 Rutgers is probably going to get some attention.
Get some votes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Utah-Florida situation also at factor there, where Florida has a quality loss. Quality loss, baby.
Bottom of the poll is going to stink this week. Let's be honest. I mean,
Tulane almost lost to North Texas. I did not watch a second of that, but that one was an alarming score tracker.
Yeah,
to keep checking in on.
I've not had a chance to watch it yet. I'm curious how that happened because North Texas is, I don't want to use the word has been totally awful this year.
And NT stands for not too good.
Yeah, that was curious.
All right, so that's about more or less. I guess that was like 23 minutes re-ranking the top 25 poll, trying to hit as many games as we could in that process. Clip it, VOD, monetize. Let's go.
Duke doesn't drop out, do they?
Hell no.
I don't think so. They shouldn't.
No. Let's see. I've got Duke at 21, and I've got Tennessee at 25. Those are the 2 losers who I do think will remain in the rankings. I've got Penn State dropping to 10. That is behind Alabama. That is ahead of Oregon State.
Yeah.
Oregon State, which is off this week, feels like a good dividing line when you're sitting there and filling out your ballot. Ole Miss. What?
Yeah.
Another
good
quality.
That's what 3 1-score wins in a row against mediocre teams. It's like Ole Miss is a 4-3 team with a 6-1 record.
Oh, I've got North Carolina down to 14. By the way, that's another one where if you want to say that they're down there at 18, anywhere from 14 to 18 is where Louisville is. 15 is 2-loss Notre Dame. Anywhere in that range, I think is an appropriate thing. And in my blurb for tomorrow's top 25 today on CBSSports.com, I said, look, the rankings for North Carolina across, when you look at the graph, are going to be all over the place. Mm-hmm. Figuring out the exact consensus is going to be really tough, but I see it as behind Utah and then probably between Utah and Louisville, somewhere in that range, like Notre Dame, Louisville, Missouri, LSU, 2-loss LSU, those are going to be the spots where I think North Carolina ends up falling.
Makes sense.